Hi. Chinua Achebe, the celebrated Nigerian poet laureate, once said, "If you don't like the narrative, write your own." And so I shall. For a very long time, I have been perturbed by the way Africa and Africans are portrayed by the Western media.
Africa versus Western media, the war for the truth. They called us backwards. They showed only our poverty. They never mentioned the hands that caused it. They filmed our wars, but never their weapons. They filmed our hunger, but never the looting that led to it. Today, the game is up. Africa is fighting back, not with bullets, but with truth. This is a media war, and we're no longer silent.
And then I asked myself, why would they want to portray Africans in a positive light? After all, they spent the last 500 years trying to destroy Africans and Africa. So we know this because they raided Africa and they stole our people, our slaves, took them to the Americas and the Caribbeans. And when slavery was supposedly over, they returned to Africa, raided Africa and Africans. They stole our land via colonialism. If you don't actually know what colonialism means, it basically means that you invade a country, you burn the homes of people, and then you turn them into your personal slaves. And that's basically what colonialism is. Why would they want to present us in a positive light? I shall be releasing videos of Africa.
For decades, Western media painted Africa with one brush: poor, hopeless, corrupt, violent. They showed our children naked, our streets dirty, our leaders as clowns, and the world believed it. CNN never showed you Africa's engineers, BBC never showed you Africa's thinkers, France 24 never showed you the gold, the uranium, the oils being stolen. Instead, they showed you huts, diseases, dust, death. It wasn't just news, it was propaganda, and it worked.
Selective coverage is a form of opposition. When thousands of Africans flood the streets to defend their sovereignty, they go against Western meddling, supporting a young military leader who's challenging neocolonial power. They don't think that's newsworthy. And that's proof that these media do control the narratives. They don't just report events, they curate the events. They decide what should get amplified. They decide what should be suppressed.
That's how they justified the invasions. That's how they pushed the aid. That's how they armed rebels. That's how they sold the lie. Because if Africa looks like chaos, then colonialism looks like help. If Africans seem savage, then sanctions look like justice. If Africa is shown as always failing, then foreign control looks necessary. But something changed. We woke up.
But they forget that social media is the new media. So the people are much more aware.
Today, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are banning French propaganda. They've kicked out France 24 and RFI, not because they hate media, but because they love truth. They said, stop speaking for us, stop lying about us, stop using your cameras as weapons. And they're not alone.
Imagine a leader like Traoré. He's expelling French troops. He's reclaiming gold mines. He's aligning with Russia instead of NATO.
And they're not alone. Across the continent, a new generation is rising. Young creators filming reality from Kinshasa to Accra, voices on TikTok, YouTube, and X calling out the bias. Communities exposing how BBC will cover one protest in Africa a lie, but ignore 1,000 protests in France. They call it journalism. We call it manipulation. We're not fooled anymore.
For me, I think that because I live in that world of, let me quickly fact check this thing. I don't buy into it. I've been in media for a very long time now. Yeah. I know when I see a sideshow. I know when we're being distracted. It takes a long time for people to kind of see it. There's things in the world that happen and you go, why is that thing the number one topic right now? If you look at the Western coverage of the BRICS summit from Friday till today, Penwell, and you read just that, I'm talking The Guardian, I'm talking Reuters, I'm talking CNN, go read those articles. There's a difference between balance and pushing a narrative. Because balance will tell you, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, but there's also 5, 6, 7, 8. Those people are straight up saying, this thing, it won't affect anything. Won't do anything. Sure. Don't worry about this BRICS thing. But because remember, they know their audience. They know who they're talking to. They're talking to a hamstrung UK economy that's struggling. They're talking to a US economy that is closing down mom and pop shops, that is closing down big retail shops, hundreds of shops. So these are the people that are dealing with this. People in America now have to get a third job. This is the reality that they faced with. While this is happening, they say, no, don't worry about that thing. It's not a real thing. If you look at the narrative being cast now, look now this week, everybody on YouTube is starting to speak about China and the Evergrande housing crisis that's happening there. All of them will speak about it, and you will all hear about it. You're going to find that this is important for them post-BRICS. Yeah. I know when I see a sideshow. I know when we're being distracted.
And now, African media is being reborn. See Africa TV, African Stream, Pan-African Daily, Heritage Africa, local journalists risking their lives to say what foreign media won't, filmmakers reclaiming our image, writers decolonizing history, musicians and poets reshaping our truth.
One of the studies that Africa Unfiltered did actually showed that Africans themselves have a very bad reputation of writing bad stories about themselves. Are you seeing that changing?
It wasn't so much Africans themselves, it was that African media were picking up stories from global media outlets that cover the world, like BBC actually, RFP, AFP, Reuters. They were the ones that was covering Africa very well. So if you were sitting in Nigeria reading about Ghana, you wouldn't be reading a story that a Ghanaian wrote. You'd be reading an AFP story, which invariably they cover hard news, event-driven news, right? So invariably it was bad news. So often Africans were reading negative stories about each other, and that was problematic because in a continent of over 1 billion people where our strength is when we are together, we have to know each other. You only build relationships with people that you understand, right? And I'll just tell you a funny story. Like, I think it was in AFCON, like not last year, the year before. I think it was Ghana and Comores played, and Comores won. There's a whole bunch of stuff on social media. It was like, who's Comores? Where's Comores? We didn't even know there was a country in Africa called Comores. That's problematic. It's hugely problematic.
Africa is often portrayed in international media negatively. The endless representation of the continent troubled by civil wars, hunger, corruption, greed, disease, and poverty is demeaning and dehumanizing, and likely driven by a calculated strategy and agenda. This stereotypical and negative media representation of Africa not only disinforms the rest of the world about our continent, but also shapes the way we see ourselves as Africans. Telling our own stories and shaping our own narratives must be our top priority. In this regard, I would like to propose to this august body the establishment of an African Union Continental Media House.
We no longer need validation. We don't need Western lights to be seen. We are telling our story, in our voice. Even governments are pushing back. Rwanda refuses to let Western media define its growth. Ghana is investing in content creation. Tanzania is restructuring state media. Burkina Faso is creating sovereign communication policies. This is not about censorship. It's about self-respect. It's about narrative power, because whoever controls the story controls the mind. Africa is not a dark continent. It was just edited that way. But now we have the lens. We have the mic. We have the truth. And to the Western media machine, hear us clearly. We are not your pity project. We are not your disaster feed. We are not your shame narrative. We are Africa. And this time, we are the storytellers. So to every African watching this, support African media, share African content, challenge lies, document your truth. Be your own camera crew. Be your own CNN. Be your own BBC. Because our story is our weapon, and we will use it to rebuild. See Africa TV. Reclaiming the narrative, one truth at a time.